So welcome back to our Saturday morning talk. Today we will start with two questions because I was asked these questions in some other forum, but these are very relevant to our discussion. So, and this is actually, these questions are related to our discussion on Maya. So I'll start with those two questions and then we will move forward. The first question is that why do we have, the thought process in our mind? Why the thought comes in our mind? This is a very fundamental question. Why a thought comes in your mind? Now, we have to analyze a word called bhav to understand this process. In Sanskrit, root bhav means to be, to exist. That is the bhav. And the word bhav comes from bhav. Bhav is the effect of bhav. When you exist, the consciousness gives rise to bhav. Bhav, you can say some sort of feelings come into you. And that bhav has its origin in your existence. The bhav gives rise to what we call vrati, a kind of path, a kind of thinking which leads from bhav to further down. And vrati ultimately leaves you to think. And thinking is finally expressed in the words, then the shabd come. So it is we can call it a four-stage process. Bhav, that is the existence. As soon as you exist, then comes bhav. With bhav is associated. The bhav is an integral part of bhav. And with the bhav, you start having vriti. Vriti means a sort of direction of thinking. And then comes your thought. And then the thought is expressed into language that becomes word. And we already discussed, with reference to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, that a thought ultimately becomes your life. Because a thought, slowly, when you keep thinking on that, it becomes your will. Then will becomes your determination. If you keep thinking on that, it becomes your determination. And the determination becomes your action, because once you are determined, you want to do that. So it converts into your action. And action becomes your life. So this is how it is, the entire process is connected from bhav to life. Bhav leads to bhav, bhav leads to vrati, vrati leads to thought, thought leads to will leads to determination, determination leads to action, action becomes your life. And then of course, action also causes reaction, and then it becomes your cause of the next life as well. So this is one process which I thought I'll mention this in our talk today, because I found this question very relevant to our discussion. Then there are many words which are associated with bhav. You will see that swabhav. Swabhav means the automatic process, the inbuilt process of your thoughts, the inbuilt process inside yourself, which comes from bhav, from your existence. That is swabhav. Then sambhav, that you look everybody with equality. Then you have sadbhav, you have abhav, you have durbhav, you have bhavna, sambhavna, you have prabhav. All these words have their direct, and very important meaning, but originating directly from the very existence, the word bhav. This is the root for all these words. Now the second question, which is very important, which was asked to me, and which is actually directly associated with Maya. The question is that if the Almighty, or the Srashta we call it, or the Paramatma, if this Srashti is the expansion of Paramatma, if we take this Upanishadic word Brahman, We say that the Srishti is merely an expansion of Brahma. If the Srishti is the expansion of Brahma, why does it get covered with Maya? Why the veil of Maya comes into force? What is the cause of it? Why it happens? Because it is nothing but Brahman. It is nothing but Paramatma. Still, there is a sort of layer of Maya which falls on it and which keeps deluding us. Why this happens? Now, this is a very important question and very requires little deep thinking on our part. Now, I will give you two examples to start, the explanation of this whole process. The first is, look at the sun. Sun gives tremendous, it's a source of light and energy. In our universe, in the universe associated with Earth, this is the source of life. This is also the source of light, and this is also the source of energy. But a small cloud can cover the sun completely. And the cloud actually originates because of the sun. The sun rays heat the water in the ocean, and that heated water rises up in the form of water vapor and forms cloud, and that very cloud becomes a sort of veil on the sun, and you are not able to see the sun because of that veil created by the clouds. So the clouds originate because of the sun, and still they are able to cover the sun, and we are not able to view the sun because of the clouds. So this is one example that though the Srishti is expansion of Brahman, still from that very Srishti arises a veil which covers this, what you call the real nature of the existence or the Brahman, and gives an illusion of Maya to all of us. That is one explanation. The second explanation, example given is that you have fire. Now fire is bright and shining, but that very fire gives rise to ash. That ash deposits on the fire and starts operating against that fire itself. The fire extinguishes because of ash many times. There is also a cloud of what you call smoke which comes out from the fire. So the cloud of smoke and the ash, both originating from the fire, start making a cover on that very fire, start making a veil on that very fire. So these are the two examples which one can take as what you call a sort of thinking process. These examples will help you in thinking process that why the Brahman, which is everywhere in this Srishti, is covered by Maya, and why that Maya starts deluding us, why that Maya starts enchanting us and leading us away from Brahma. Now there is a more detailed explanation on this issue which I thought would be relevant today, and this is in any way part of our discussion on Maya. You see, anything which manifests physically has to have two sides. You cannot create a scale with one side, it will have two sides. You cannot create a river with one bank, there has to be two banks. You cannot create a mountain without a valley, it's not possible. You cannot create similarly sukh without dukh. The sukh and dukh has to come together. You cannot create a coin only with head and not with tail. The head and tail will have to go together. They are coexistent. You cannot think of any manifest object in this universe which has only one side. If there is north, will be a south. If there is a east, there will be a west. If there is up, there will be down. If there is love, there will be hatred. These are what we call dvand in Sanskrit. These are dualities that coexist because of the nature of manifestation. When you manifest the pure consciousness in the form of an object, this duality is a necessity. Without that duality, you cannot manifest it. It's not possible at all. It's an impossible task to manifest anything without duality. That is what the reality of nature is. So the duality comes into existence with the very first manifestation of nature, the very first manifestation of Brahm into this world. The duality comes into play, and that duality gives rise to dvand, that duality gives rise to dilemma, that reality gives rise to options, and those options cloud our mind. The thinking process gets clouded because of those opposite looking options in our thinking process. So that is one part, that any physical manifestation must have two sides. Without that, the physical manifestation is not possible at all. Heat has heat and cold will go together. Love and hatred will go together. The valley and the mountain will go together. The life and death will go together. All these have to be together in a physical manifestation. The second thing is that everything which is physically manifested will slowly depreciate with time. It is again a necessary condition of physical manifestation. Whatever is created will slowly depreciate and dissolve into the nature over time. Whether it is mountain, whether it is earth, whether it is a human being, whether it is an animal, human being, I mean the human body, whether it is the body of the animal. I'm not referring to the consciousness which exists in human being, because that is beyond depreciation and that is not existing physically. I'm talking about the physical existence. So anything physical, whether it is the sun or the moon, or whether it is a star or a planet or earth, or a small house, or an animal or a plant or a body, whatever it will depreciate with time. This is an eternal law of nature. And that is why we call it Shanbhangur, because Shan in our meaning could mean differently, but as Dinesh was talking of an insect today, now for an insect, the Shan could be like an year. The time scales are very different for every living being. So we call it Shanbhangur because all this physical existence starts depreciating from the very time of its coming into being. As soon as it comes into being, it starts depreciating. And the depreciation continues till it is fully dissolved. So this is the second law of nature, which is responsible for creating the illusion of Maya. That is what how it is. We'll come to this a little later. Now the third is our sense organs have limitations. Our sense organs can only understand the physical objects. जो इंद्रियां, if we call it in a Sanskrit word, इंद्रियां फिजिकल जो भौतिक चीज है उसी को ग्रहण कर पाती है. ग्रहण करने का मतलब उसी को अंडरस्टैंड कर पाते हैं, उसी को वो ले सकते हैं. विदाउट फिजिकलिटी the indriya take the physical object उसको ग्रहण करती हैं, but without physicality. That is the quality of senses. You can understand a house without getting the physicality into your mind, but you will understand with the sense organs. So this is a very specific nature of sense organs. Things which are completely non-physical, they are beyond sense organs. We Our five senses of perception cannot understand those things, and the consciousness is in that quality. Consciousness is beyond the purview, beyond the scope of our sense organs. They cannot ग्रहण कर सकते हैं, उस सेंस ऑर्गन्स कॉन्शियसनेस को ग्रहण नहीं कर सकते. That is what is said in Sanskrit. So that is the third reason why the world is important for us. The importance of world lies because our sense organs are able to understand the physicality, not the things which are metaphysical. And that is why the world becomes important for us, and we remain engrossed into the world because it is physical, it is tangible, it is sensible. You can see, you can talk, you can touch, you can smell, and you can hear, and that is why you remain engrossed with the world. So that is leads to the spell of Maya. The non-physicality slowly gets out of your mind. Even you look at a person in your own family who has passed away a few years ago, slowly he gets out of your mind. When he was physical, he was all the time occupying your mind. But when he died, his physical existence disappeared, then you are slowly forgetting him. And that's how the things move. So, sorry, there was a screen of GeoMeet on my laptop. So these are the three fundamental reasons why the Maya operates with us in a very precise and very subtle manner. These three things, that anything physical will have two sides, dvand, then the sense organs can only understand the physicality, and that the physical things start depreciating, disappearing over time, and they dissolve into the nature after a while. So this is the real, these three are the cause of existence of Maya in this world, which is actually pervaded by Brahman, pervaded by Paramatma everywhere, but still this Maya operates because of these regions. Now, I call these things, the things which are beyond sense organs, I call them into two English words. Insensible, that is, cannot be understood with your sense organs. And then second is unintelligible, which your mind cannot understand, which is beyond the intellectual power of human being. Now, there are many things which are unintelligible. For example, we have not even been able to find an answer till today with all the great minds existing in this world, whether the hen was born first or the chicken was born first. Sorry, the egg was born first or the hen was born first, or a man was born first or a woman was born first. This is what we call unintelligible. This is beyond the purview of human intellect, human logic, human rationality. So these are two things. We will come to them in a little while. But coming back to our topic of Maya, which we started, this is our fourth session. Coming back to that topic. Now, how do we get out of it? We have understood that Maya means not that appears, not that which appears. It is not that. We also took the example of rope and snake. The rope appears like snake in the darkness. So when we are living in darkness, the whole universe pervaded by Brahm appears nothing but the physical. It appears like it's a physical objects, nothing else. And that is why the modern science, is involved into physicality, and they feel that the whole universe is a collection of physical objects. So this is these physicalities keep us engrossed because our sense organs can only grasp the physicality. They cannot grasp what is beyond physicality. That is the biggest problem with our sense organs, and therefore we remain attracted to the physical nature of this world. We don't go beyond from where the physicality comes forth. Now, this how to transcend that. In order to transcend this veil of Maya, we have to start thinking in slightly different direction. Whatever you see visible, whatever you see, you have to go behind that and see how this visible thing came into existence. What is the cause? It will be called as backward linkages. Like in industry, we have backward linkages. Similarly, we have to go backward in physical existence to find out what is the cause. Now, in the ocean, the waves are associated. The waves are the one which are visible to us. Ocean is not visible to us. Only the waves are visible. All the time waves are moving. But without ocean, there could be no waves. Waves are impossible without ocean. The ocean is the cause of the waves. The ocean gives rise to the waves, and actually the waves have ocean. Each of the wave has a part of the ocean. Without that, the waves are not possible. Similarly, precisely, we have to go back. Look at a plant. The plant is in a seed. The seed has a plant. This we can analyze with our sense organs. The seed has a plant, and the seed, you put the seed into the earth, you water it slowly, slowly, it will grow and grow into a plant and fruits and whatever. And ultimately it will give birth to seed. The seed will give birth to the seed. That is the last output of a seed. But where does this seed come from? What is the origin of the seed? That is what we have to discover. Similarly, now our body is visible, we can see it, but how this came into existence, this body came into existence. So we have to go backward in each existence, or in general into one existence, to find out what is the origin, and then we will find out the real nature of this world. Now, to understand this, I will give you one example which is associated with our example of Bhav and Bhav. Now, the Bhav, we have become very clear that Bhav is the one which ultimately gets into our mind, becomes our thought, and it becomes our will and determination, and becomes our life in the form of action. But the Bhav comes from where? It comes from Bhav. Bhav is what? The existence. So it comes from the existence. The origin of all this comes from the existence, which is to be, which is what? The consciousness. As soon as that consciousness leaves us, all this process goes away. Nothing of it remains there. The bhav goes, the bhav goes, the vrati goes, and then the thinking goes, and then everything else goes away. So the root is what? Bhav, the existence, and that is consciousness. Similarly, if you look at a plant, a seed of the plant. Now the seed fertilizes. The seed has a life. People, when you look at the seed, it looks that it has no life, but it has life. Otherwise, it cannot grow into a tree. It cannot give you fruit. It has a life. It has a life which is not as developed as human beings' life, but it has a life. Now that life came from where? That life again comes from consciousness. And that is why in Vedic literature, the consciousness has been divided into 5 parts, 5 different you can call them layer or stages of consciousness. The lowest consciousness is in the form of mineral regime. That is what we see earth, we see all the minerals, the solid form, which looks very solid, actually that has the lowest amount of consciousness. Then the second higher level of consciousness is in vegetable regime, mineral regime, then vegetable regime. The vegetable regime has higher consciousness than mineral regime, and that is why it grows. You can see a plant grow, you can see it's giving you leaves and the flowers and once again the seeds. It goes upwards, you can see that. So this is life which is somewhat more developed, the consciousness which is more developed than in a what we call mineral regime. The third stage of life is animal regime. In animal regime, there is again life, and this life is more developed than the vegetable regime, but less compared to human being. But the birds and the animals can walk, they talk among themselves, they understand things. When you see a dog on the roadside, it runs away when your car comes. You see an animal goes away from the road when the car comes. So they understand things. A bird, makes its nest so beautifully that the egg can be, preserved in that nest properly at the time of birth. Things like that. They have a great intelligence of their own. Each of the species of life, which according to our Shastras are 80 million species of life, they have their own intelligence, their own thinking process, their own level of consciousness. And the fourth layer is the most developed, that is the human, being. We can actually, our thinking is more logical. Uh, we can argue, we can debate, we can find ways and means to control animals, to control vegetation, to control, other movements of the nature. So that is a more developed form of life. So that is again the consciousness which comes into being. And the fifth layer is the universal consciousness which exists everywhere. Now, this is the general gradation of consciousness, but how this consciousness comes into being, how it comes into the physical form, because that physical form is important for us to understand. And then we will know that every physical form comes from this consciousness. Now, there's a very fascinating writing. Actually, uh, this writing comes from some of our tantric writings, also from Vedas, from Upanishad, but more from the tantric writing. The tantras have given more specific, details of this writing. That when universal consciousness is trapped into body and mind, then it becomes physical. The body and mind is the trap for the universal consciousness. That has also been explained in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna. When he talks about how a human being comes into being, he says that the three gunas, that is Raj, Tam and Sat, the three fundamental qualities of nature, they come into contact with consciousness to form a body. So the three gunas of the nature, they come into contact with consciousness, and that leads to formation of a body. And that is what modern science has also discovered now. When we talk about atom, the constitution of an atom, they talk about electron, proton, and neutron, the three particles in that. All the three make the atom. There could be no atom without the three particles. It's not possible. Now they have they have gone little beyond. I don't know how far that is true, but they claim that uh, there's a thing called quark. The proton has been divided into quark, but that is not an issue here. The fundamental nature is constituted of three elements. In our ancient times, rishis called them Sat, Raj, and Tam. That is the origin of nature. You have what we call Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva is the first atom of the atom, and from that is impregnated by the three qualities Sat, Raj, Tam, and these Sat, Raj, and Tam come into contact with what you call consciousness, and that gives rise to physicality. So everything physical you see comes from these two, the three gunas and the consciousness. The combination of the two gives rise to mountains, to rivers, to animals, to birds, to insects, and to human beings. That is how it works. So the foundation of entire physicality lies in the consciousness. That is what we need to understand. That consciousness is the foundation of our existence. Consciousness is the foundation of everything that exists physically in this world. And once we understand that consciousness is the foundation, then we can slowly get away from the physicality. Then we can get away from attraction of the physicality. Once we get away from the attraction of physicality, then slowly we will get away from the veil of Maya. Because Maya is actually the physical appearance which keeps us spellbound, which keeps us all the time hypnotized. That is the problem. And that is what we have to understand, that this physical world which keeps us hypnotized all the time actually originates from consciousness. And that consciousness is, eternal. It has no depreciation. It has no origin. It has no resolution. It is, Shashwat. It exists all the time. And that is what in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the Atma. He says that the Atma cannot be destroyed by weapons. It cannot be made wet by water. It cannot be dried by air. It cannot be, destroyed by fire. So this is what he says ultimately. And this Atma, when it has a body which comes from these three elements of nature, that body grows in the form of what? A boy, a small little kid, and then the boy, and then adult, and then youth, and then old age. That grows. That three elements of nature, they grow, not the soul. Soul remains static all the time. And that is how we have to understand the origin of entire physicality in this world. And the veil of Maya comes from that very physicality for three reasons which I explained. One is that the physicality itself gives rise to the veil, like the sun gives rise to the clouds which can hide the sun itself, or the fire gives rise to the ash which hides the fire itself. Similarly, the physical existence gives rise to a veil which can hide the underlying reality of consciousness in this universe. That is one. Secondly, because it gives, it has to have two dimensions. It has to have the opposites. It has to have, there is no physicality possible without opposites. So we are all the time uh, engaged with the opposites. And whether I should do this or should I do this, do I do that? We have in Sanskrit, they call it Kim Kartavya Vimud, that you are not able to decide what to do, what not to do, because of these opposite looking options available to you all the time. And these options come from the physicality of this existence. The physicality of the existence gives you two options, whether you want the head or tail, or whether you want to go on the mountain or in the valley. So all this comes from there. They are you know, they appear opposites. They are not really opposites. They appear opposites to us because the very nature of physicality gives rise to them. So that is the second reason. Third is that all these physicalities starts depreciating and then they go away, and then we feel, things are going away, but still it gives you an impression of stability. Still you feel the world is existing. Everybody dies in this world, but still the world exists, the life exists, and we feel this is stable, and that stability is because of the veil of Maya. We get that feeling of stability because of the veil of Maya. While there is nothing stable in the physical world, the stability is only at the underlying layer of consciousness, which is all the time stable. And then we talked about the senses, which can only grasp physicality and keep us engrossed with the physical world. And therefore, we don't understand the real nature of the reality, the consciousness underlying behind all that physical existence. And that is how we remain what we call in a state of delusion, in a state of, uh, uh, you know, continuous uh, flow of Maya, continuous flow of uh, what you call soap opera in this world. The word soap opera is the most appropriate because everything keeps changing, and there are climax after climax, which keeps us engaged all the time, waiting for the new one. Therefore, we have to go deep down into the origin of this physicality and then understand that the physicality comes from consciousness. All that exists has its origin in consciousness, and the three gunas of nature, the consciousness and three gunas of nature, gives rise to physical existence in this universe. That is what we have to understand, and should not get into, completely drowned into that physicality, which we do all the time in our life. So this is the best way to get out of the veil of Maya. You have to think all the time the real origin of the physical existence. Once you go to the real origin, you will realize that the physicality is only appearance, the reality is consciousness. And then this appearance will not be deluding you, will not captivate you, will not keep you spellbound, and will not hypnotize you, and you will be able to understand the real nature of our existence. And that is what is, that is, we are eternal. We existed all the time, and the consciousness is the one which keeps us all the time alive, which keeps us in the shape, which organizes our system, the human constitution. Without consciousness, the human constitution disintegrates immediately and goes back to the nature, to the three elements which we talked about, the three gunas which we talk about. So this is how the operation of the physicality and non-physicality works, and that is what keeps us deluded. Now, I have, I'm thinking that we'll have to take one more session on this, because I have a few things which I want to discuss with you. And then we have to have a question answer session on this, more detailed, because I'm sure you have many questions on the issue of Maya. And we would like to have a little longer session on Q&A on next Saturday. But today also I am now open to the Q&A. Please ask whatever questions you have